So, continuing with Ronald Shower's book, the seventh significant thing to note about the prophecy of Daniel is as follows. Jerusalem and the temple would be destroyed after the first 483 years of prophecy would be completed. Verse 26. Since the 483 years ended in 32 AD, this meant that the city and the temple would be destroyed sometime after 21 AD, after Messiah would be rejected by Israel and crucified. Thus, although Gabriel had just foretold the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the temple after the Babylonian captivity, surely to Daniel's encouragement, he now foretold another destruction of them centuries after the rebuilding, surely to Daniel's discouragement. Wow, this poor guy. This would confirm the fact that God's chastening of Israel would not cease with the end of the Babylonian captivity, and it would help Daniel understand why the vision in chapter 8 portrayed more suffering for Israel for centuries to come. The fact that Jerusalem and the temple would be destroyed after Messiah would be cut off indicated that this future destruction would be God's sovereign judgment upon Israel for rejecting Messiah in his first coming. As noted earlier, Jesus warned Jerusalem about its destruction that would come because it did not recognize the time of its visitation by Messiah. Luke 19. Gabriel said that Jerusalem and the temple would be destroyed by a certain people. It is a fact that the city and temple were destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD, some 38 years after 32 AD. Thus, the Romans are the people to whom Gabriel referred. From today's perspective, it can be understood that this meant that this destruction would come while the fourth kingdom of Gentile rule, the Roman Empire, represented by the legs of iron in chapter 2 and the nondescript beast in chapter 7, would be dominating the world. So Daniel was given by Gabriel that prophecy as well. Gabriel declared that the Roman people would belong to a coming prince, literally a prince, the one coming. Thus, this coming prince would be a Roman ruler. This prince cannot be Messiah the Prince, referred to in verse 25, for the Romans who destroyed Jerusalem did not belong to Messiah, and Messiah is not a Roman prince. The literal translation of a prince, the one coming, indicated that this ruler and his coming were already known to Daniel. Daniel had already been informed that such a one would come in the future to destroy the people of God. Indeed, this coming prince would be the little horn of Antichrist, who had been revealed to Daniel in chapter 7, some 15 years earlier. As noted in that chapter, Antichrist would be the last great ruler of the revived Roman Empire immediately before the second coming of Christ. Boy, you want to find out what was going to go on, you don't have to go to the New Testament. Go to Daniel. And other places, of course. The next thing Gabriel said was this, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war, desolations are determined. The word translated flood is used in Nahum 1:8 for the outpouring of God's wrath. Some refer the word its back to the city, saying its end is referring to the destruction of Jerusalem, but this is grammatically incorrect. Instead, its refers to back to the coming prince. And its end will come with a flood. Its refers to back to the coming prince. So, moving on to Daniel 9:27. He, the Antichrist, will confirm a covenant with many, Israel, for 1/7, literally 7 period. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on a wing of the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. The book of the Revelation corroborates this. The Antichrist will confirm a covenant with Israel for 7 years. He, the Antichrist, will confirm a covenant with many, Israel, for 1/7, 7-year period. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on a wing of the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. So we have a covenant with Israel, desecration of the temple, with the image of the Antichrist declaring himself world ruler and persecute all who will not worship him. So in the middle of the 7, put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on a wing of the temple set up an abomination that causes desolation. New Testament confirmation, 2 Thess 2, 3-4. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come, the coming of Christ and our being gathered to him in the rapture, until the apostasia, the falling away, the great apostasy of believers from the faith occurs, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. Note that the Greek phrase, he apostasia, referring the falling away, rendered the falling away, or the apostasy, referring to the singular and specific and extreme rebellion, the deliberate and total abandonment of the doctrines of the Christian biblical faith, which were evidently formerly believed and followed by believers in Jesus Christ. Unbelievers are not in view. They can't apostatize for what they didn't believe. Note the definite article he, rendered the, signifies the epitome, the notable, singular, extreme apostasy, as opposed to the presence of the indefinite article a, as in one of a number of departures from the faith, which are not the epitome apostasy foretold about. Now, we've had a number of apostasies throughout the ages. Note that some contend that the apostasy may refer to some event of apostasy, which has already occurred, such as the Jews' apostasy just before the Maccabean uprising, or the falling away of many during this church age. This ignores the stipulation that Christ's appearance upon the earth, since his ascension, must come prior to the apostasy, for any apostasy to be the specific apostasy that is in view in 2 Thess 2:3. Whereupon Paul states in verse 3b-4 of 2 Thess 2:3-4, don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come, the coming of Christ, and our being gathered to him in the rapture, until the apostasy, the falling away, the great apostasy of believers from the faith occurs, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. Here it is, Revelation 13, 1-8. And the dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on his horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and a great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast. Miraculous healing. Men worship the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worship the beast and ask, who is like the beast? Who can make war against him? The beast was given a mouth and to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise his authority for 42 months, 3.5 years. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. He was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them, and he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All the inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the book of life belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. So the Antichrist will be the main impetus behind the persecution of believers, both Jewish believers and Gentile believers. Notice that he puts himself up as God in the temple in Jerusalem to be worshipped, and will not stand for anyone worshiping the one true God of the universe. He will rule over all men for a season and persecute all who will not worship him, Jews and born-again believers alike. The fulfillment of the 483 years of prophecy in Daniel leaves 7 years of history under Mosaic law, focused spiritually on the nation Israel until Jesus comes again. Those remaining 7 years are described in other passages as the 7-year tribulation period. And you can look this up, corroborate it, under dispensations. And you take a look at 1 Thessalonians 4, 13, 18, and 2 Thess 2, 1-8. That's confirming the rapture. So, we have Daniel 9, 24-27. What a remarkable prophecy.